Anybody that's in the working class, anybody that has to work for a living should be concerned. There's been a rollback amongst worker protections, and democracy is being eroded. Senator Bernie Sanders launches an investigation into working conditions at Amazon by way of example. We just want to give you some examples of how this democracy, our democracy, is being eroded, people's rights. Senator seeks information about systematically underreported injury rates and turnovers at US second largest employer. Amazon drivers, including Iraq vet, sue over poor working conditions, saying they peed, defecated in bottles to avoid discipline. So again, living at a time where you can't even get a break, and all of us are old enough to remember at the height of COVID, had it not been for Amazon workers and other essential workers, we don't even use the term anymore because it was so damn superficial when it was put out there. But the reality is, without those workers, people would not have been able to get the necessities that they needed during the height of COVID. And notice I say height of COVID because COVID is still having an impact. And this is the way that these employers are treating the people who help to make this country run, to help get us what we need on a regular basis, things that we often take for granted. Next headline, a 12-year-old might have grown your food in many states. That's perfectly legal. Republicans are rolling back child labor laws, but they've always been weak on farms. In other words, you can exploit children on farms. And Republicans are standing up, they want this. This is the kind of America that Republicans are creating. And then David Pepper's tweet, David Pepper is a former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party, on working conditions during the pandemic. The risk is all being pushed down to workers, no mask requirements, even in stores, still not enough PPE, must work, no childcare, national pushback for corporate immunity, website to report workers so they lose unemployment. From all in this together to work or else. So, right, we move from we're all in this together or work or else, just discussing. And then the legislation on the legislative side, the partisan splits. And when we look at why this is happening and how intensely this is happening, it is mainly happening where there is GOP control in state houses and state senates, general assemblies, legislatures all over this country. So Republican controlled chambers, you got 29 that the GOP control, the House, and 29 states where they control the Senate. Democratic controlled chambers in the House and the Assembly, 20 states where that is the reality, and 20 Senate chambers where that is the reality, and the coalition controlled chambers, Alaska Senate. So we see that Republicans control. Bottom line is, moral of the story is, the majority of legislatures across this country are in fact controlled by the GOP. And this chart right here, the percentage of state legislative seats held by a political party, and the Republicans are dominated. Now, Republicans versus Dem governors, the same. The margin is a little smaller, but we got 26 Republican held governor seats and 24 for Democrats. The legislature is where all the misdeeds primarily are happening. Now, this has been a trend since 2008. The GOP has been planning a way to have control, even if they don't control the White House, even if they don't control Jackson, quite frankly, both chambers of the Congress, as we know they did not in the 118th Congress, or 17th Congress, they did not, but they found power in being in control on the state level of government. And Democrats have been so focused on the federal level, they left the back door open for them to do that. And workers are suffering because of these politics. There is an intersectionality or nexus, if you will, between what types of public policies pass and the impact that those policies have on workers and their families every single day. And we're seeing the dangers of allowing the GOP just to trollop on through the country and take full control of most legislatures.
And again, efficiency at the expense of human lives, at the human livelihood rather. But also, one thing that corporate America does often is make the public foot the bill for their mistakes. Whether that be investments that they made improperly, if they spent too much money on X, Y, and Z, if they have to fire a bunch of people, tens of thousands of people. And now we're looking at what's happening in the commercial real estate market, where a lot of these giant corporations have to continue to pay leases on buildings that are losing their value and that people really don't need to show up to. So I expect, well, not I expect, but we should all expect to continue to see policy pushes like this, because instead of really adapting to how the job market in the world is changing, they're just going to continue to focus on short-term profits at all costs. Because
even at the cost of life.
Yeah, because adaptation costs money. It takes investment, and screw that. Who needs that? So.
Yeah, this is trifling. I mean, that's the word that comes for me. That you would tread. A good word that you use, trample upon workers in this way. And they're doing it deliberately. This has not happened by accident. We got to wake up in this country, truly. I believe that people should be voting in a working class coalition, not who's Democrat and who's Republican, but who actually is standing up for working people and their families in this country. That's really what is coming. You wanna know what the us versus them is? Workers versus the corporate interests. That's what this is. It's not about Democrat and Republican. It is about workers and the corporate interests that dominate the halls of Congress, the halls of these state legislatures, the presidency, and the governor's mansions across this country at the expense of everyday workers.